Hello everyone, welcome back to our weekly live stream. We missed 1 week while I was out of town, but I am back. So hopefully you guys will remember this channel and come back and join me. We shall see. Now I realize that we are almost mid-December, and because of that a lot of people are going to parties this time of year, assuming they feel safe enough to do so. So I'm just waiting to see if anyone shows up. Preview mode, what is that? Let me go check out YouTube and see what's happening over there. Heh, there's some people. I was so confused. All right, good. I can stop what I was about to do. I was like, wow, it's really quiet. It was so weird. So how you guys been? Did you miss me? I want to stop off Casual Reef Keeping. You are our first person today to comment, so welcome to the stream. Good job. Thanks for loving the tree. I picked it up locally. I was shopping and I was like, I need something small. I mean, we're almost there, and I will be seeing family for Christmas, so I don't know that I'm going to go full tilt and fill in the house with decor, but I will probably put some garlands and things here and there to get myself in the holiday spirit. Hi, Travis. EJ says, this is a good topic because my family is going to Disney. So basically what I did to prepare for my trip to Maui would be what you would want to do to prepare your tank for the holiday. So if you were to have a lot of people come over to your house, and I realize this is kind of a weird topic because some people don't want to see anybody. And I'm not turning this into a whole thing. I'm just saying that some people are fine with gathering, some people are not. So point is, even if you're in a small group, you know, it's you and your children, you still want to prepare your tank now so that during the holiday itself, you can just enjoy it, and the kids can love it, and it's clean, and you don't have to fret with it, you don't have to worry about it, don't have to panic, don't have to deal with any disasters. That's the plan. If we prepare completely, then we can have a few days of complete peace and enjoyment, and that would be your best bet. So we'll just go right into some of the things that we would want to do starting today. Test your water. It is water test Saturday. I will be doing the same myself. I was considering testing my water earlier this week when I got back, but no, I was hurting. And I thought, I'm going to do nothing. The tank looks really good for now, and I just been watching it daily. So the only thing I did, which believe it or not, even that was hard to do, was clean the glass. And that's because I injured my rib while I was in Maui. And because of that, just any kind of stress on it just hurts. And some people, you know, have been privately asking, well, what happened, you know? Including I got a phone call from my parents. And can you explain what happened again? Because that's just weird. So basically, I was staying with friends, and one of them was cracking everyone's back. And I watched them do each person, and I was like, all right, they seem fine. And so I went last. And when he was, you know, cracking her back, normally you lie down on the floor and they push on your spine and they push upward. But what he did with me, right when you would expect him to just kind of like push between the shoulder blades and make the, you know, the neck pop, he came from the other direction and pushed downward down to my spine, and it did something, and I literally felt a rib just squooch forward, and I was like, oh my god, stop, don't even touch me. And my best friend Jesse said, you'll be fine, it's just a floating rib. So I googled that because I didn't know what a floating rib was, and it was not my floating rib, by the way. The next day we went to the chiropractor. She was sure this was a nothing thing, and he would just pop something back into place and I'd feel fine. And then when he looked at me, he says, oh no, this is not that at all. What you have happened is the rib has separated from the cartilage that actually holds your ribs together, and you are going to be in a lot of pain for the next couple of 2.5 weeks. He says, I wish there was something I could do. And you know, he did some tests and some checks and pressed here and there and did a couple of pops on the lower part of my back, but the area is just tender right here. It hurts to laugh, it hurts to cough, it hurts to sneeze. Sometimes you have to cough and you're like, I don't want to. And sometimes just breathing deeply, like, you know, if I was trying to inhale, you know, to clear my nose just really fast, I feel the twinge in here. So I have been taking pain pills daily, ibuprofen mainly, which magically has worked. I'm actually very impressed because usually ibuprofen doesn't do anything for me at all, but it kind of just cancels it out. But as soon as those wear off, it is right back in my face and hard to get in a car. I was driving to drop off packages for customers to FedEx, and that little bit of driving was actually really hard on my torso. I'm just steering wheel. It's automatic transmission. It's not like I'm doing a lot of effort, and that hurt too. So it's going to take a little bit. So because of that injury during the trip, I mean, as soon as it happened, I just thought, oh, this affects my business. This affects my, the rest of this month. This affects my personal health every single day. It was just like, oh, it's the worst. So it's just a matter of waiting for that to heal. According to the person I spoke with, he said, basically what will happen is scar tissue will bring those two pieces together. Fantastic. So another scar inside. Hopefully this will just resolve itself in short order. According to Google, it can take up to 3 months. I'm hoping it's not going to be anything like that. I didn't actually crack or break a rib. I didn't feel anything like that. I felt something move, and it was very unpleasant. So it is gone, and it is gone from where it's supposed to be. It's a problem, and now I am just dealing with the aftermath of just putting up with it. So I am pushing out little videos here and there. I'm not resuming the Reef Diary immediately because I wasn't up for it, and I'm definitely not gonna be up for it each day. I'd much rather just kind of come to you guys when I can. And even today, I was debating, do I even do the live stream? Then I was debating, do I pull out all the gear, or can I just go ahead and just do something very simple? And I thought, well, if I take my time, I can set up all the gear. But then after the show is over, I got to put everything back away again and then relax some more, because that's what I want to do. I just want to relax as much as possible so that way I can get back on my feet. The sooner the better. If I keep doing super active things, it's never going to heal. It's going to take forever. It's going to be a whole problem. So the building outside even has to be on hold now. I can't do anything because I can't do anything. I just got to wait. So be it. That's just what it is. So during the trip, because of this, no more dives. And then there was a lot of bad weather. A lot of rain came through, and it affected all these different plans. And to be honest, they'd say, do you want to do this? Do you want to do that? I was like, no, I don't want to do anything. I don't want to go anywhere. I just want to sit here and not move. So I did get to do a couple things. We did go to the Maui Aquarium. That'll be the next video I release. And we went to this spot up high, about 1,000 feet up from sea level, where we had a nice view and tried out something called Ocean Vodka. It's actually the brand. And they make this vodka from sugar cane rather than potatoes. So we were up there, and we were having our food and having our drinks and just enjoying the view of basically the valley that leads down to the ocean below to watch the sunset. And that was really nice. And we also played board games at the house. I played Catan, which I've not done before, Settlers of Catan. And I actually won one game, which is pretty great because everyone was like power players, and I was just kind of like doing my thing on the other end of the map. And I ended up doing the best. And so it was cool. I said, okay, I win. I'd never want to play it again. That way I can leave on a high note. I did a lot of firsts this trip. This was my first time to Maui. My last trip to Hawaii was to Oahu. So I've hit the 2 islands in the middle. I have to decide if I want to deal with any of the rest or not at some point in the future. But I am glad I got to go see my friends. But it was just a real bummer to get hurt. I mean, that's the case with anyone. You get hurt, it messes up everything. And there's never a good time for it. And it just was just crappy. So that's where it is. A couple of people asked me where the beard is. Well, I went through TSA. No, that's a lie. I was in the ocean. No, that's a lie. I actually was going to come up with like 19 different feasible ways I could have lost the beard, but they're all dumb. So rather than waste your time, basically I had to shave to wear my dive mask so I could go diving, and I thought, I'll just take it all off. I could have just removed the mustache area and maybe trim back a little bit to where the mask seals on your face, and then I thought, I'm just going to go ahead and remove it entirely, so it is gone. And I had it for over a year, and I have to tell you, 2 funny things. The first thing that happened when I was done shaving, I looked up in the mirror, and I did not recognize myself at all. I was just like, who is that guy? Because I've been looking at myself in the mirror for over a year with a beard. So that was funny. I mean, seriously, I had my whole life without a beard, and I was just like, what? And it took me a few looks in the mirror over a few days to kind of say, oh yeah, I do think I remember that guy. That was funny. And then the other funny thing is, when I landed in Maui and I went to Jesse's house, and there was her husband, and there was Ashley and all my other friends, and everyone just said, hi, and we're so glad to see you, and we're glad you're here and all that. And no one mentioned that the beard was missing. So I didn't say anything. I was curious how long it was going to take. And then finally, the next morning, I just said, well, I have to say I'm impressed that you did not notice the beard was gone. And she's like, oh my God. I mean, literally it was the next day, and no one had even considered it. And she said, I'm just so used to what you look like now. I was like, how can you be used to it? I've been like this for a solid over 365 days. And yet she remembered me because we've been friends for like 15 years without a beard. So it was just funny because it was only then when I actually pointed it out that she noticed. And of course, people were like, oh, I liked you with the beard, I liked you without the beard, that whole thing. But in the end, it was just kind of curious to me that it wasn't mentioned. Let's see. See, there's a good lie. Hawaiian water made the beard dissolve. That's a good one. I don't know if the audio is out of sync. I hope it's not. But I wouldn't even know what to do to solve it other than restart it. And that would restart the whole stream. So we'll just not worry about it. All right, so let us talk about preparing your tank specifically. These are the things I did for my tank before I left town. I went through and I cleaned everything like I always do. I really like everything to be really clean so it's in the tip-top shape. So hopefully maintenance will be a breeze for whoever's watching my tank while I'm gone. If you have no one watching your tank, it just depends how long your trip is going to be for you to decide how comfortable you are with leaving your livestock unattended full-time. But in my case, I made sure the top-off containers were full. I cleaned the glass, of course, so you could see into the tank well. I made sure all the pumps were spinning and the vortex were flowing water through the tank before I walked out the door. I physically looked at each one because I have gone on trips before and left one turned off for some dumb reason, and I want to make sure that the flow is not disabled when I'm gone 7-8 days in a row. I also prepared food, which you saw in probably the last Reef Diary, where I made a batch of food for each day that the tank sitter would thaw and then feed to the tanks. And a couple people said that's a lot of food. Well, I've always been kind of a heavy feeder because I only feed once at night. That's my main feeding system, is to feed at night. And so I want to make sure there's a lot of food in the tank for all the fish and for the corals to grab with their polyps before lights out. And I've been doing this forever. And it's one of the reasons why my phosphates tend to be a little bit of a yo-yo with them going up and me bringing them back down with Phosphate RX. I went ahead and I cleaned off the algae turf scrubber before I left because I didn't want the hair algae to die off and turn into a red slime cyano situation. And since I've come back, I've been kind of keeping an eye on, what does it look like? And it looks ready to harvest again today. And that would make it right around 10, let's see, I left on Tuesday morning. I either cleaned it Monday night or Tuesday morning. So it has been about 12 days. So it's right on target to go ahead and clean the algae turf scrubber again. So that'll happen today. I was going to change the reagents on my Trident, but I decided not to before this trip. I felt like there was almost enough to get me by. And then a few days into the trip, I got a notification on my phone because I have Apex Fusion, which is my controller, the Apex, controls the tank. And so this app notifies me if there's anything amiss. And it said that it couldn't run test B, which is going to be the calcium test. And I knew immediately that the reagent had technically run out of... See, the way it works, it mathematically counts how many tests it does. And when it hits a certain number, it says, okay, you've run out of fluid. But technically, there's still some in the bottle. So if you just hit reset, you can use it more until it literally runs out of fluid, where it says there's no sample or there's no reagent I can draw up. So I did that, and that disabled the alarm, so my tank sitter didn't have to worry about anything. And then by the time actually today was the notification on my phone, it's empty. And so I went ahead and I changed out those reagents now. If I was going to be gone longer than the 7 days, I probably would have definitely changed them before the trip. But it was so 50-50 on what to do, I just left it. And so now I did the test. I haven't even looked at the results yet to see where we are today. But that doesn't matter because I'm still going to use ELO's test kits to verify. I also made sure that I had talked with my tank sitter about what the tank was going to need. and I explained, you know, the basics, and I sent him a picture of the fish food I'd packed a different way than usual. And I just said, you know, let me know if anything's amiss. He has dealt with all kinds of issues over the years. I always use the same person. I always say you need a Bobby. Everyone needs a Bobby. And Bobby has figured out things even when it was equipment he's not used before. And because he's really smart that way. And he went through and he, you know, I texted him after a couple of days and said, how are things going? And he said, everything's fine. I was like, okay, good. Because it's nice to get no news, but at the same time, it's even better to hear everything's great. And he wrote me back and says, I meant to tell you, your tank is so clean. I was like, yeah, I've been on top of it. So today I had to go ahead and clean the glass because it's growing a film algae regularly these days. And if I don't, the tank actually looks a little cloudy, as if maybe one of the anemones was spawning. But it's just a matter of erase it. And when I hit it, you know, I mean, whatever's on the glass, that little bit of algae, as I do this to the glass, I can literally see that stuff just puff like into the water, like it's phytoplankton, and it goes through the water column, and within 30 minutes, the water's clear. So that was it. I would not recommend doing any big changes on your tank before the holidays. It's usually a terrible decision to do that then, because whatever big thing you do is going to consume a lot of time, and if something goes wrong, you're going to have to deal with it right then and there. So if you can just kind of handle the normal routine maintenance right now, clean your protein skimmer, clean your power heads and pumps, inspect your return pump to make sure it's fine, check the probes if you have a controller to make sure they're clean and giving you decent readings, then as we get closer to the actual day, you've basically done all your maintenance, and that way when it's time for the actual celebration, there's nothing you have to do with your tank. There's literally nothing. The only thing you can do is feed it. I mean, come on. That would be ideal, and that way you can just enjoy your aquarium. So I would like to recommend that to you, which means you're going to want to do a little bit of work each day for the next 12 days. And that way, come December 24th, you will be completely done. Now, if you're leaving town sooner to go see family, you have less than 12 days. So don't procrastinate on this one. And don't do it all at once, because it's just a ton of work. So instead, pick projects you want to do before the holidays, and just knock them out one by one, day after day, and that way everything's completed. You may need to mix up more dosing solution. You may need to calibrate dosing pumps. You might be in the middle of some treatment right now, like you're killing cyano or you're trying to get rid of green hair algae. These are the things that we want to definitely have completely done before we leave town. You don't want it to end the day before your trip. You don't want to have to hope everything's going to be fine because you're doing a rush water change right before you're heading to the airport. I don't even like to do a water change before I leave town. I understand the mentality. Some people feel like, oh, I better do this because it's good for my tank, and then they leave and something goes weird, like your skimmer overflows. And it's much better to just do that when you're back, because that way you're there after the water change to keep an eye on the aquarium and make sure everything is healthy and everything's going well and everything's been re-enabled. You remember to plug the heaters back in. These are different little things, these little nuances that we go through these steps, but when you're in a hurry and you're about to leave town and you've got to grab your suitcases and you got to remember to pack this and pack that, you may forget things. Now, if you're like a pilot who has a checklist and you're following the list and there's no way you're going to forget anything and you want to follow that checklist, you can do that too. But I think my approach is a little safer, a little bit more relaxed, and you're able to accomplish this without a lot of stress. I wanted to show you a couple things I came home with. I didn't bring everything to the camera, but I did bring home a brand new mask. So this is a dive mask. I've had the same dive mask since 2012, and because of my horrible eyes, I have to wear prescription lenses. So this mask actually has the corrective lenses in it to where when I take off my glasses, I can actually see you guys and you're in focus. So this is great. It's a nice upgrade for me, and I always like using yellow. I don't know why. Everyone in the ocean is so color coordinated, and I'm just such a mess. I'm literally, you guys saw the video, I was wearing these blue plaid shorts. I had on these red socks that have sharks all over them, which are really cool. And they're diving socks. They go with the boots, And I discovered, because the boots I bought 2.5 years ago, they were designed to walk on rocky substrate as you work your way into the ocean to go on the dive, and they were ideal to wear for my dives in Bonaire. And the inside on the first dive just ripped the inside of my ankles apart. It was like the thread they used to put the zipper on the boot, or however it's stitched together, it's almost like they used fishing line or something, and it just ripped my flesh open. I had to wear bandages on the areas where it rubbed, and it was on the inside of both ankles, so it literally matched from boot to boot. I was in a lot of pain, and I have scars there to this day. It didn't just heal up nicely because I kept diving, another 13 dives. But what I did was I went to the dive shop and said, look, these boots are doing this. And I said, oh, you need these socks. And so I put these thin socks on, and they're fine. They work great. I have no problem with the boots anymore, but I don't look good. But at least everyone knows who I am. Now, I don't have the perfect form. This was probably my 51st dive. I know some people like to celebrate their 100th dive. I don't know when that will ever be, but the dives I've chosen to go on have always been nice trips. I'm not just diving just to get a number. I don't want to, just keep diving in lakes and streams and ponds and whatever just so I can have these numbers. I don't care about that. I want to dive in Bonaire. I want to dive in Fiji. I'd like to dive in Indonesia. I've dove in Florida Keys. I've done Oahu and now Maui. One day I will head down to Cozumel because I've still not done that one yet. So that's the one thing I got. And then the more important thing that I got, and this is a brand new one, by the way. I have not even had a chance to use it yet. So I'm going to show you. Actually, I'm going to take it out of the case so I can show you the case. So I got the Catan, which this is a nice, really thick case that holds within it this dive camera. So, this is a pressurized case, so you can film with your own iPhone in the ocean. So I would actually just put the iPhone inside this case, and then I would close it, and I could go ahead and start filming, take pictures, and shoot video, and have access to all of this. And the cool thing about this case is that the entire series of buttons here on the back are all Bluetooth. So you use their app to introduce the phone to the case. There is a way to pressurize it on the front, and you'll have a light that tells you it's pressurized, so you know if you've actually sucked out all the air out of the case so that it's vacuum sealed. And that way you'll know you've got a good secure bond. And then there is a strap to hold onto your wrist if you want, but I don't do that. I actually tether it to my BCD. And then I have this very large, I think it's 67 millimeter pink lens. And this will go on the front right here to block out all the strangeness so that your videos come out looking correct and not all washed out in blue. So I'm waiting for one more part. When I was there on my first dive, I got to use their Catan case, and it was great. And so I said, yeah, I definitely want to buy it. And I did buy it while I was there from Jesse's Dive Shop, which is Maui Diving and Snorkel Shop. And so I got this and I got this, but there's a bracket that screws on the front that this will screw onto, and that was not in stock. So I'm gonna have to wait for that to show up, but I don't have another dive planned immediately, so there's no rush. But at some point, I'm definitely going to need that, so I can go ahead and use this nice new case. Now, the Catan case that fits around your iPhone, and you can actually put multiple phones in there. I think the only one that doesn't fit is anything that's Max. It's like if you had a 13 Pro Max, that may not fit. But the 11, the 12, the 13, they all will go in there, and probably even backwards. I could probably go all the way back to the 6 if I wanted, assuming it could run the software. The case itself runs $329, I believe. And then this lens was about $39, and then whatever that component is I need. And then I will be ready to go. And I'll probably play with it in my aquarium a little bit, because why not? That way I can kind of maybe get some better angles of some things I've been trying to shoot in the past that just never seems to be right. If I can just literally take my phone and stick it into the case, that'd be kind of cool. So I'm excited to get that. I've used the water shot in the past. And you know, when I'm talking about this stuff, you might say, "Oh, this has nothing to do with aquariums." Well, I mean, technically, you could definitely use it in your aquarium. And if you are determined not to buy a huge housing to put around a Nikon or a Canon, these cases like the Catan or the water shot are nice choices that will let you seal your phone up inside and take pictures and video and then be able to look at them immediately. And that's my favorite part, because I see a lot of people use GoPros, and manipulating GoPro software is so cumbersome. I've never enjoyed it. I was watching Ashley because she used the GoPro during our dive, and then she said she had to import them into her phone, which I thought, okay, that's kind of cool. Goes right through Wi-Fi. You're not, and no, I think she hooked up a wire. She did hook up a wire, and she hooked it up, and she had to use the GoPro software, and basically it analyzed everything. And I was like, okay, so it's done? And she goes, no. Now that it's all analyzed, now it has to put it on the phone. Or maybe it put it on the phone and then it had to convert it, and now it's available to her camera roll. It wasn't even like a simple step, you know, where you could just like, just do it, which is how it should be. There should just be a Nike button, just boom. But no, it involved a lot of wait time, and so she was in the house with her stuff connected, and she's kind of stuck because she can't do anything. You can't exit the screen while it's doing its import. You have to just wait through it. And then we were leaving to go to that sunset, and so we were in the car, and she was waiting. And I was like, is it done? She goes, no, it's still not done. And then finally she goes, okay, that part's done, but now it has to do all this. And we were just like, what? And she's like, yeah, I hate that part. So I'm not a fan of GoPro. And I'm definitely not a fan of, after you filmed, you can't even look at it. Now, maybe the newest GoPros have, you know, the back of the screen, you might be able to play some stuff back, but I love being able to take out the iPhone, there's your screen, and start looking at things immediately, or even drop it through AirDrop to other people's phones, or to AirPlay it straight to a nearby television, which I did in Bon Air. We went straight from my phone, straight to sharing it with a group of what we just did, just to kind of review and discuss, and you know, it was great. And I love the speed of that, and so I really enjoy that, versus the process of trying to take a DSLR into the ocean and make that all work. The best part for me was the lighting apparatus that I hauled with me all the way to to Maui and did not use. The water shot case was just a little bit snug in between the handles that you hold to have the lights on top. And the Kraken case is a smidge smaller, so it actually fits in there beautifully. I'm like, oh, that's cool. So I'm very excited to get the opportunity again, when I'm feeling well, to go diving somewhere nice and hopefully get some good footage to share with you again. But I really liked what we got, just that first dive there off Maui Pier. All right. Variant says, how do you or would you prepare your tank and hobby when you have a newborn joining the family? Planning on being a father soon and curious what to expect from my reef. Well, the big problem is with a newborn is that they need attention 24 hours a day. And it's like you never get any real sleep. And every time you think you're about to get some sleep, you don't get to have some sleep. So you're going to have an exhaustion factor you're dealing with, which is going to make it really hard to want to keep taking care of your tank. So you have to keep that in mind. And you know, you're going to be with your wife, your spouse, and you're going to take some turns with sleeping or cleaning or taking care of the baby, but you're just going to find that you have a lot on your plate. So you want the tank to be as robust and as automated as it possibly can be, and you just want to kind of keep an eye on it. One other thing I forgot to mention when you're traveling and you're going to be away from your tank is, if you can, set up some webcams to look at the tank from a distance, from remote places. I was in Hawaii watching my tank through the Wise webcam. I've got this Wise 360 that lets me pan and tilt and zoom and turn the camera 360 degrees, so I can actually look at the whole room, and that's very convenient. And you can get as many webcams as you want to spend money on to look at it from every angle. And you could have, I remember someone told me a while back they bought an alarm system. They were super excited. They said, I got this ridiculous deal. And he didn't pay for the alarm. He just said, I just want the system. And it had infrared cameras. And he hooked up like 5 or 6 cameras from every angle of his tank, including the top of the stand looking down in the sump and watching the protein skimmer. And because it was infrared, he didn't need any light down there. And he said, if you want, you could put a hard drive in it so we could record and save for later, but I never need that. I just open their app and I just go to the different cameras and I look at everything on my tank and I know everything's good. And I thought that's pretty cool, and I actually put it on my wish list with Amazon. And then later on, when I was ready to pull the trigger, it no longer existed. That one item wasn't for sale anymore. I was like, oh, blew it. But these Wise cameras are not expensive. You can, I think they're as low as like $30, $39 each, and you can set them up in various places. You can put them on tripods. You can put them wherever you want if you're leaving town, because they are not in your way. And so you can have them. You don't have to have them all the way across the room, out of the way, unless you're going to have some kind of foot traffic in the house that could potentially walk into those. But if you want to rig some things up around your tank, you definitely could, and then you can check on things. As well as if you have a controller, you can look at your parameters and see that all is well. And if you have a good controller, you can actually program it to tell you when things are wrong. Like there's no flow going through this pipe, the temperature is too cold, the temperature is too hot. I don't know what if you have very specific ones, like your alkalinity has dropped. I mean, it just depends how automated you've made your system. But having those notifications come up is nice, to where you could actually make a call. And then the other thing you can do, if you don't have a tank sitter, but you're trying to use a relative, start training them now. Try to get them to understand what they're doing so that they're not completely clueless. They say, yeah, I got it, but they don't. They don't got it. They never got it. You want to make sure they really understand it, and you want them to really understand to call you and tell you if there's a problem and explain it or show you through. I remember when Dwayne was here helping me with my reef, his protein skimmer kept going bonkers. It just kept doing the weirdest stuff. And he was on FaceTime with his son, and they were looking at, he was saying, now move the camera here, now move it over here. And he was watching, he goes, now twist this, now adjust that. And he got it operational again, and then the next day it messed up again. And he eventually, when he got home, he bought a brand new pump and solved the problem once and for all. But at the time, he used FaceTime to make the correction. So if you have someone with a smartphone that is near the tank that can show you things, or shoot a really quick video of what's wrong and send it to you to have you confirm it's a problem, that's another method that works. And then finally, you can call your local fish store and let them know you're going to be out of town, you've left this person in charge. If they run into any problems, they may be contacting the store. Would they be willing to help? And that way you kind of set up a safety net under your tank sitter, so that way everything will be fine. So I would recommend doing that as well. And if you're not letting anyone touch your tank at all while you're gone, if you're thinking, I don't need to feed the tank, that's kind of a personal choice. I'm not a big fan of don't feed the tank at all while you're gone. I like to have auto feeders on the tank that drop in some pellet food once a day. I think that's a smart move when you're traveling. It can be less food than you normally offer, so you're not just totally polluting the tank. But there has to be enough food that everyone's being fed. So for example, in the anemone cube, there is 12 clownfish for sure. I always wonder if it's a little higher, but it's got to be 12. There's 3 bangais and there's 2 gobies. And I want to make sure those gobies get food. So I'm always squirting food with a pipette into the tank. One puff after, I dip in the bowl and I do it again and I do it again and I do it again. And I shoot about 9 puffs of food straight down toward those gobies to make sure they get some food, because they are very timid and they stay down at the bottom by the sand all the time. They're not sifting the sand, so they're not getting food that way. They are literally waiting for the mysis to come rain down from heaven. And so I want to make sure they get some food, and I tell that to the tank sitter. And then the bulk of it gets poured in here, and a few squirts get put into the frag system. The frag system has grown more algae on the glass, and due to my ribs hurting, I can't actually scrape it off properly. I tried using the flipper, it barely touched it, because the stuff that's in there is this really hard, brown, dense stuff. It needs the flipper scraper, and I did a little bit of that till my ribs couldn't take it. So that'll be a project for next week. But I would like to at least get the clarity up on the tank, because I had it all looking really good before I left town, and now it looks all icky again. Oh well, so be it. Another thing you can do when you're leaving town as a stopgap measure, just to protect yourself, is to have extra salt water on hand in case they need it. You don't necessarily want to ask a stranger, a person that doesn't know your tank well, to do a water change, because they're probably going to muck it up. But if it's someone with some experience, if it's someone that understands aquariums, and if you come to realize the tank needs a water change now to solve the problem, having the salt water ready is going to be way better than I'm 1,500 miles away and I ran out of salt a month ago and I'm not going to be back for another week. So what I'm saying? You can just see how this is going. So to prepare in advance and have enough on hand will be wise. So that way there is a safety net. Even if you had to call the fish store and say, hey, I need you to get over there and do this, the salt water's here and it's already mixed the way you like it. But otherwise, the fish store will have to bring their salt water and their mix and whatever it is, they will just do it and they'll charge you accordingly and so forth. But, so I mean, these are the things I like to think through. I'm always looking at the logistics of things. I can't help myself. I always want to know how it works or how to alleviate the problem or how to address it. And, so I try to think ahead. So those are some of the thoughts. If you want, you could actually make like a binder or a PDF file and show them specific things with pictures that is like a cheat sheet reference that they can look to in case this happens or that happens or the other happens. I've seen people back in the day, they had 3-ring binders with dividers and protein skimmer, in-tank flow, closed loop, feeding, lighting, and they would tell them to flip from section to section if anything came up. That it was like real homework. And I don't know, maybe some kind of, sometimes you can just do a video tour and you can explain everything in the video and then send it to their phone so they've got that video to reference. I mean, I didn't know how to play Settlers of Catan, and before we even started to explain how to do it, Steven says, hey, I'm going to send you this file. And he had filmed one person explaining how to play the game for about 8 minutes, and I sat there and watched this 8-minute video, and I knew the basics of the game. And then as we played, we talked more around the table and they told me more. But that video tutorial was useful. And if you want to make a video tutorial about what you do with your tank or what you need to keep an eye on or what you need to ignore, you could do that and give them that video. And that way they have it. Now, if they still mess up, you've done everything in your power to handle it. If they are unwilling to watch the video, if they are unwilling to call or text you, that's a whole other fight that you can have when you get back home. But hopefully, these steps you take in advance will give you the best chance of success that everything will be that'll go really smoothly while you're unable to care for the tank for whatever reason. Alex says, I can't decide if I should get an MP10 or a Nero 5 pump. Which would be better for 45 mixed reef? The MP10 works really well. I had that on a frag tank for a long time. For 45, I almost want to see 2 of those. I mean, I know it's not a huge tank, but it's just 1 point of flow plus the return water coming in if you have a sump under that tank. The thing I like about using Vortex is you can use a battery backup to keep it running if there's a power outage. And if the power goes out, everything stops in your tank and there's no circulation, and it will not resume until the power comes back on. And if your power's out for a minute, it doesn't matter. If your power's out for 4 or 5 hours, that could be a problem. If it's going to be 8 or 9 hours, that's a real problem where the oxygen has been dissipated or depleted, and now the tank inhabitants are going to suffer and possibly die. So a battery backup is a huge selling point for Vortex pumps, and that's why I like those better than the Nero 5 that has no such option. Now, I run the Nero 5 in my frag system. I just run one, and it's on a tank that's 60 gallons, and it pushes that away, which is toward the direction of the overflow box. It's worked out really well, but it has no battery backup. Now, my return pump is the Vectra, which is Ecotech, and it does have a battery backup, so the return pump keeps moving even if the Nero 5 is off. So you have to ask yourself, which is more important, to maintain some kind of flow in the tank, or you just want this pump because maybe it costs less? And that's ultimately that's the question with every single thing we buy. But I like the battery backup option myself. Sean, thank you for bringing this up. I turned my AC in the house off when I went on vacation. It didn't even occur to me that the tank temperature would go up. Silly oversight on my part. A hot tank is not a happy tank. Yes, when you are traveling, your thermostat, either you might actually physically switch it to off or something, or it might be like the Nest that does it automatically. And when you're away from the house, it actually lowers the house temperature a few degrees to save money. And that's its design. You may need to override it and just say, keep my house this temperature the entire time. Now, the house doesn't have to be 80 while you're gone. I mean, the house could be 71 degrees the whole time, or 70 or 69, whatever number you like to keep your house at. I kept mine at 71 the entire time I was gone. And believe it or not, we were still 70s and 80s here in Texas in December, which is pretty wild. Normally we'd have some cooling off by now. And like this moment, it's 48. Tonight, it's going to be 36. tomorrow night I think it's going to be 32. And then next week we're back to 80 again. So our weather here is a little bipolar, and your thermostat may need to constantly be switched from heat to cool, you know, physically, or you may have an auto button on yours to where you can tell it, keep it in this range, add heat or add cool as needed. But I did consider adjusting the temperature of my house before I left town, and I thought, nope, I want the tanks to be stable. I don't want them to have to fight. I mean, how much money am I really saving if I lower the house temperature and the heaters in my tank are on nonstop to compete? I mean, those little heaters are going to pull a lot more power around the clock than the AC heat system cycling on and off for a few minutes at a time to maintain a certain temperature. So yeah, you want to be aware of that when you're traveling. Thank you very much for bringing that up. Steve says, maybe you could take a picture in your tank with a dive box. I will be. For now, I would like to get that piece that goes on the front, and then I will, you know, go through it and learn it all again. Because my initial learning was download this app, give me the phone, and then they did what they did, and then they said go and push these two buttons. I'm in the ocean trying to remember which button does which. But I was really impressed with the Bluetooth part of it, because in the past with the water shot, the phone had to be centered exactly right. So as you pushed on the rubber button on the outside, it would have a little touch point on the inside that hit the right spot of the screen to take a picture or to use the flash, to switch to video. And there was another setting. I think it was to go to home and then go back. And you had to put the app exactly in the right spot on the screen so you could tap that to reopen the app if you accidentally closed it. And then there was a lock button to like lock all the controls so that way you wouldn't accidentally trigger anything while you were floating over the reef, not taking pictures or video. And that was fine, except certain things would happen. Like, I remember this happened to me a couple times. It happened to my friend Wes a few times. We would go dive with our iPhones in our cases, and then you get down there, and then the screen, the message comes up in the middle of the screen, warning batteries at 20%, and you can't hit OK because it's the middle of the screen, and the buttons in the water shot were aligned on the right near your thumb. And there was no way to disable that message, and you basically were stuck. You couldn't take any more pictures. You couldn't do anything else. You couldn't turn off the alarm. You couldn't, the alert. You couldn't shut off the screen. And then, you know, you'd finally get to the surface, and I'd open the case, and the phone would be so hot, and I hated that. And when we did the iPhone 11, it was on the whole time. The screen was on the whole time. And when I took it out of the case, when we were done with our dive, we dove for 77 minutes. So it was in the case probably 85 minutes, 90 minutes. It wasn't even warm, which I was really impressed with because my iPhone 6 would get very, very hot. So I really like the whole idea of the Bluetooth, and I'm wondering if their Bluetooth buttons actually will help you cancel out that error message, you know, when your battery is low, because that's one of those annoying ones that comes up in the middle of your screen. And, you know, ideally, you always want to charge everything before you go on a dive. But then while you're down there, you're using it up. And then, you know, you come to the surface, you change tanks, you know, you're out for 20, 30 minutes. You go back in the ocean. If you didn't plug in your phone to charge during those 30 minutes, you have the remainder of the battery. And that's when these stupid 20% is left, 10% is left. And it leaves you where you finally are next to that fantastic eel and you have no camera and you're like, oh my God. So you want to make sure that you have got that all taken care of. So maybe the Kraken will even handle that stupid alert. I will find out. I'm going to try to figure out if that is something I don't have to worry about. That would make me happy. Let's see. Jamie says, I have a newborn that is stuck in the hospital. I'm barely at home. Sorry to hear that. And I also have a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. You learn to adapt. My reef is thriving right now, and I'm basically only feeding and water testing. Well, that's how it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be feed and test water, and everything goes smoothly. I think it's because we're reef keepers. You know, we're gluttons for punishment. We want to control everything, and it's just too much. So, I mean, if it's simple, if you got simple corals, if you're just enjoying just what you have and you're not constantly trying to achieve some pinnacle of the reef keeping hobby, you can definitely have a reef tank with kids and babies. I'm not trying to talk you out. I'm just going to say, I mean, I've done it, and it's very hard having a baby. It's a lot of tending, and there's a lot of emergencies, and there's another crisis, and now we got to rush back to the doctor or the hospital because the fever or whatever. It just, things keep happening, and when that happens, you're so exhausted mentally, physically, and then to work on your tank too can be, a little overwhelming. And Reefer Madness says, I'm dealing with a newborn. She loves it. It's not that bad. They may stare in silence at 2 a.m. Yeah, they may just be looking at the tank. All right. Proteza, thank you very much. I appreciate that. He says, you look good. I just joined the stream to say this. Keep up the good work. I appreciate it. Fortunately, there's no like giant bruise here. You would think, as much as it hurts, there'd be something obvious. It's all internal. But eventually, it'll be back to normal. I'll tell you this. Yesterday, I had to cut out one lid for an overflow box to ship it for a customer. And I had a sheet of polycarbonate that was probably 4 feet by almost 4 feet. And I thought, can I lift that? Should I? So I went to the garage. I have a brace that I picked up at Walgreens. It's just a thing to hold your ribs together. And so I wore that around me to hold me together. I'd already taken my pain pill, and I went ahead and laid the sheet on its side, and then I walked around the other side of Minion, and I slid it onto the table and pivoted it, and then I told Minion, cut out this piece, and then I had to go to the workbench, and I had to round over all the edges of my handheld router. And then I had to cut out a piece of cardboard to fold together to put this in to ship it. And I had to put 2 other small packages together, and that's all I was able to do yesterday. And I was like, I'm literally done. I mean, that, the saying, it's the least I can do. That saying has always driven me crazy. That was literally the least I could do that day, and I was done. I was maxed out. I was back on the sofa, just icing my side and taking it easy. So standing here talking to you isn't so bad. It's moving, and it's doing things, and it's lifting things that is too hard. And that's just going to take some time to heal. I'm really hoping the 2.5 weeks thing is true, because that means I'd be basically back to almost normal by Christmas, and I would really like that. Anra, hello from Austria. Hello from Texas. Oh, that's so neat. Steve Church says, I defrost frozen food and keep it in a small 5-liter mini fridge, and then use a programmable dosing pump to send a small amount into the tank each day. I like that. There's got to be ways of doing that. And I've seen some crazy stuff over the years. There was one guy, he made this contraption that had a bunch of PVC pipes. It almost looked like a Gatling gun, you know how that would be facing forward, but it was facing up. And his frozen foods were inside these PVC pipes. And then the whole thing would turn daily, I guess, somehow. It moved forward 1 notch. But the crazy part, if you thought that wasn't crazy, the crazy part was he had a hairdryer inside the freezer mounted above the pipe that would launch the food. And the hairdryer would blow hot air down the pipe, it was lined up perfectly with it, to melt that food so it would fall through to then go to whatever else got it into the aquarium. And I'm just, in my brain, it's just like, you have a hairdryer running inside a freezer. The whole point of the freezer is to keep things frozen. Now you got something pumping out hot air for a certain duration, just enough to make that food drop out. But, condensation, moisture, ice crystals, the whole thing. I'm like, what? But hairdryers are cheap. So that's still, when I see it, it still makes me laugh, though, because it's just so out there. Eventually, someone will come up with a really cool system that will work. There was a prototype they showed a lot of us a couple of years ago at MACNA, and I don't know if it was a Kickstarter. I don't know if it ever got completed. I never heard anything of it. But the principle behind it was that you'd have this little chilled thing that you could put on the edge of your tank. And I love these kind of ideas. That the whole thing, it's the logistics of how to make it work consistently, regularly. That's the hard part. And keeping food frozen until you need it to be thawed, that's a challenge. Sean says, I'm adding bagged live sand to an established bare bottom. Any advice or warnings? Well, I would say that, obviously you want to stop all the pumps in the tank, and it's bare bottom, so really there's no limit to how much sand you could be putting in the tank. You could put in a half an inch across the whole tank, you could put 1 inch, you could put 2, you could put 4. You could literally add a whole bunch of sand if you wanted, and because it's live sand, in the next couple of days you'll see all kinds of life appearing on the glass for about 24 to 48 hours, like these little snowflakes will appear everywhere, and those are a type of non-floating jellyfish that grab onto the glass. And that's it. I mean, there's nothing else is going to happen with your tank. You're not going to have any weird surprises because you've added some sand to a bare bottom system. Now, the new sand may blow around a little bit in your flow initially because it needs to kind of have more bacteria inside it to kind of like help glue it all together a little bit. So you may have to adjust the nozzles of your returns or where your power heads are to alleviate that some, but sometimes certain areas the sand is just going to move. I have that issue right here in my tank. It's always low right here because of the way the water pushes out and draws in, and this big coral here keeps moving too, this tongue coral. But it's not enough to distress me. It's just the sand is not completely equal all the way across. And if I do a lot of deep cleaning and I clean the glass, between the sand and the glass, that area, and then I rake it all nice and smooth, it looks good for like a day, and then after a day it's gotten back to its highs and lows because that's how flow works in the ocean. Okay, the one thing that I did not do in Maui that I wanted to do, and I thought about it before my trip, and then I thought about it during the flight. But what I like to do, and what I've liked to do in the past, is when I go somewhere, I like to take the ICP test with me and scoop a water sample so I can send that off to see what the parameters were of the reef I visited. And I didn't do it this time. I was on the ocean for one dive before I got injured, and because of that, I didn't go in twice, and I didn't get to get a water sample this time. That would have been fun. The water temperature was nice. I was told 79. I don't know if that was accurate. I didn't actually look at my gauge to see what it said, but I dove without a wetsuit, which was nice. And I did get a little chilly after an hour and a half. And if it's a full sunny day, you usually don't get cold unless the temperature of the water is that much lower. But when you've got the sun hitting you the whole time, it tends to keep you okay. But some of the people in the dive group actually wore wetsuits. Others just wore rash guards like myself. I had the rash guard with the long sleeves in case I brushed up against a coral. But it was comfortable. And I did say in my first video that I thought the visibility, the distance you could see underwater, was about 100 feet. And then, of course, I asked the people I was with after the video was released, how far do you think we could have seen that day? And they say, oh, 50, 70 feet, not 100. And I was like, all right, I was wrong. But that's because I was just operating off of memory and guessing. And I didn't actually talk with anyone to discuss it. But visibility is a very important choice when it comes to diving, because if you can't see, what is the point of diving at all? It's just like, hey, I'm going to go for a drive when it's foggy. Why would you ever do that? See my point? So when I showed you in the video last night how the water was so brown, I mean, everyone commented on it everywhere I went. No matter where we went, they were like, oh, look at the ocean. It's like milk, chocolate milk. It's terrible, terrible conditions. I mean, everyone knew. And all the dives that were scheduled throughout that week from the dive shop, they were all being canceled and refunded because people couldn't dive. And sometimes they can postpone them to a different date, but when you're a visitor like I was, and you're only there a fixed amount of days, if you can't get to that dive within like the next 24 to 48 hours, odds are you're going to be catching a plane soon, and that's going to be it. And in my case, I wasn't able to do my dives that I wanted. I wanted to do a night dive. I wanted to do a dive off the back of a boat. Those are both canceled because I was injured. But I'll go back someday. And hopefully it'll be really nice weather that time. It was funny too because, not only was I there and this happened, but it was raining like crazy, and they hadn't had rain all year long. I mean, all summer it was just perfect. And that's the thing that Maui is known for. It's like summer all the time. And this was like this big crazy storm coming through that flooded the island quite a bit. I mean, the neighborhood where I was staying, all the trees were blown over or sheared right off of the ground. I saw a capsized boat. Some cars were washed out of the parking lot right into the ocean. It was some serious flooding in certain areas, and it wasn't just some rain. They had talked about snow, but they were talking about the Big Island, not Maui, and they were supposed to get like 14 inches of snow. So that would have been nice to see, but I didn't get to see it. All right, let's answer some of your questions today because that's all I got, and I'm gonna have to wrap this up soon and get off my feet and put all this away again. So, but I do appreciate that you guys tuned in today and let me catch you up a little bit. And I will be releasing one more video, and it'll be about the Maui Ocean Center Aquarium. So that'll be nice. And I almost put that with yesterday's video, but the whole video is becoming really long. And I thought, you know, I'll make it a separate video just because maybe someone wants to actually look up that place specifically, and then this would be something that would show up in a search. So any questions? Nope, no questions? Did we cover it all? Hi, MC Hammer Torch from Germany. Well, I have nothing to tell you. Oh, I can tell you this. Came home from the trip, tank was in great shape. Didn't lose a single coral. Everything's doing really well. There's a couple pieces that moved. I gotta put them back where they belong. But even the one, there's a little tiny chalice down here that has not looked well, and turns out it needs almost no light at all. It's some kind of a chalice, and it was upside down on the sand, and it's actually upside down on the sand right now because I used a cleaning magnet and flipped it. But when I uncovered it, the tissue is still alive. There's still color. So even that one that was iffy, still okay. And I do appreciate that my reef is doing well. I will be releasing a video shortly of how everything looks in the tank, where you can see that. That'll probably be a reef diary coming up next week when I start to feel a little bit more myself. So I'm just going to end it here. I don't see any more questions happening. We're just going to have a short live stream. I thank you very much for tuning in. Please do test your water today, and do